So Wolfman, this is a modern day sort of reboot, reimagining of the classic Universal monster from Universal Pictures, the Wolfman, which came out in 1941. As we know, Universal Pictures has been sort of dabbling in their Universal monsters sort of stable of characters for quite a while. Most recently, about 10 years ago, there was the extremely failed experiment of the dark universe, which pretty much stopped before it ever got started. it was
Hmm.
it was going to be this shared connected universe bringing together monsters like the Mummy and Frankenstein and Dracula. Tom Cruise was a part of it. Russell Crowe was a part of it. But
Hmm.
because of just the lack of success for the Mummy, Universal quickly pumped the brakes. Now things kind of changed a few years ago with the release of The Invisible Man, which was sort of a rekindled attempt by Universal to make a reimagined update to one of their classic monsters. That movie also was directed by Leigh Whannell, and it was actually pretty successful. It did well when it came out. It's a solid movie. It made, I think, somewhere in the vicinity of $145 million, and the budget
Mm.
was extremely small, somewhere between $7 and $8 million, and so incredibly successful. A lot of positive word of mouth. I also remember that was one of like the last big theatrical releases that year before the COVID pandemic started, and so the memory of seeing that in theaters is like burned into my mind because we didn't go to the movies that much after that. But it
Hmm.
was a success. And because of that, they decided, like, okay, well, let's, instead of doing sort of a shared connected universe, let's do some standalone, more grounded, lower stakes films. And lower stakes in terms of budget is what I mean. And so they decided to bring Leigh Whannell back for this Wolfman feature film. But that was only after an initial pitch came from the person who was initially supposed to play him, which was Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling actually brought this material to Universal. He wanted to make a Wolfman movie, and he was going to make the movie with director Derek Cianfrance, who he worked on in The Place Beyond the Pines, an incredible 2014 movie. But they decided to drop out of the project for reasons unknown, and so Leigh Whannell was brought in to direct this movie, and then Christopher Abbott stepped in to portray this character after Ryan Gosling stepped away from the role. And so this movie, after all of its development over the past few years, finally came out this past weekend. Got a chance to go check out and see it. So with all of that out the way, man, I'll pass it to you. What did you think about this new reimagined update of Wolfman?
You spoke about just Lee Whannell and where he came from and the things that he's done. I really like The Invisible Man. I think it's a good movie. I like Upgrade. That's a good movie. Insidious 3. Your mileage may vary on that film, but I think just given what he had done previously, I was interested. My ears perked up a little bit when I heard that he was directing Wolfman and that Chris Abbott would be a part. So it was definitely something I wanted to check out. I wasn't super excited, but I was like, okay, Wolfman, what you got? And for me, unfortunately, I do not like this movie very much. And there's not a lot of things that, honestly, I think a ton of that I do like from this film. This film is, you talk about the original Wolfman and all those Universal classic monsters that we have. This movie is very different from that, which I expected it to be. Don't get me wrong. I didn't expect it to be like the original Wolfman at all. But the original Wolfman at least there are things in that film that make it interesting to me. There's gypsy stuff and there's parts in the woods that are interesting. I don't know, but in this film, it's a little bit different. Where the main character Blake, Christopher Abbott's character, he kind of persuades his wife to go up with him into to his father's old cabin up in these woods, where of course the wolf-like creature exists. And I think I just expected more from a lot of the film. I think I expected a better creature design. I think I expected maybe a story that wasn't so boring. Maybe I expected a little bit more chemistry out of Christopher Abbott and Julia Garner's characters. I don't know, but there was a lot in this film that just fell flat for me, and I found myself bored in a lot of the movie. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot to chew on for me. I was like, maybe I could chew on the creature design. I couldn't. I didn't really like it that much. And when you see it, it's like, is this how woof is this really? Like, how much woof are we getting here? And so I think, man, I like the way it was shot. I like some of the setting and production design things that we get. But overall, man, the movie just fell flat for me and was kind of boring across the board. I think sometimes it tries to do something special where it plays with sound or perspective of whatever the Wolfman is. I think some of that stuff is kind of some cool ideas, but overall, man, I just found myself kind of being checked out of the movie for the most part.
Wolfman, the Wolfman, I should say, the original Universal monster is it's one of the classic iconic horror creatures that have ever been created, and that whole stable of characters, Dracula, Frankenstein, that Universal really shepherded in the late 30s and early 40s. They kind of are the genesis of American horror feature films, and
Hmm.
Lon Chaney Jr.'s representation as that character. I mean, he was the only person at that time that had starred in not only his original film, but 4 sequels after that. Not Bela Lugosi, not Boris Karloff had done as many films as Lon Chaney Jr. And so Lon Chaney became very synonymous with that character. And
Hmm.
since that time, we've gotten hundreds of werewolf movies. There have been just countless spin-offs and remakes and reimaginings. A lot of them have not worked. You have a few that have become, sort of cult favorites over the years. An American Werewolf in London or Teen Wolf, things of that nature. So he
Hmm.
has the character has a long history, obviously, in Hollywood. And, the fact that they were going to come back and try to do this new interpretation of it with Leigh Whannell, who had such success with The Invisible Man, it made a lot of sense. And it certainly, I think, uh, it certainly made all the sense in the world that he would be the guy to kind of step up to the plate and be the one to shepherd this through and to give his take and to do something a little bit more grounded and realistic, which is very similar to his approach in The Invisible Man. And so that gave me some reasonable excitement to look forward to this movie. Unfortunately, it's just a disappointment. It doesn't work in a lot of those respects. He's still a very talented filmmaker, and you can tell the craftsmanship and his eye for certain shots and the look and the feel and the atmosphere of the film. It's all there. That stuff is very much working for the most part, but this movie fails a lot in just the performances of the film, unfortunately. And with all due respect to Chris Abbott, like, that's a big step down from Ryan Gosling and what we would have gotten with that movie. Just in
Hmm.
all honesty, I just wonder what that movie would have looked like. Chris Abbott's a good actor, but the chemistry between him and Julia Garner was never really there. This movie kind of lives and dies based on their relationship and their connection with
Hmm.
each other, and sort of the dissolution of their marriage and how it's changed over the years and his relationship to his father. And never watching this movie did I ever really believe that they were actually in this marriage and were in love with each other. It just never came across that way in the movie. And again, I like both of them a lot as actors, especially Julia Garner. She's done some really terrific stuff. I, like a lot
Hmm.
of people, discovered her wonderful work in Ozark. She's incredible in that show. She also did a really, really cool little small film a few years ago called The Assistant, which is really good. Last year, she did a movie with Jessica Henwick called The Royal Hotel. She's really good in. She's always turned in really, really solid performances for me, and she's pretty cool here. But I think it's very limited in terms of what she can do. She just doesn't have a ton to work with. And then the whole creature design and just the wolf aspects of this movie, Christopher Abbott's character becoming the Wolfman and experiencing that transformation. I see what Leigh Whannell was going for, but I just don't think it really pays off in the best ways. He's very much influenced here by The Fly and just sort of the
Hmm.
transformation of your body and just sort of the breaking down of your body physically and what that can do to you mentally and psychologically. They examine a lot of that stuff, but it just doesn't really pay off. And then when you finally see sort of the final creature design of the wolf, it just doesn't look all that great. It's just kind of a guy who is, sort of, um, metamorphing into something else entirely, but it doesn't ever feel like Wolfman. It doesn't ever feel like
Hmm.
that particular character. And the tension, once you sort of realize that it doesn't really reach that place and it doesn't get there, it kind of all evaporates. And, ultimately it just doesn't really pay off into something that's all that worthwhile, I think. And so I certainly would have to say it's a big, big step down from The Invisible Man, which is unfortunate because it just doesn't quite seem like Universal as a studio can kind of figure out like how to gain momentum with these characters. Occasionally they'll release a movie that's like it's okay or it's fine, and then they try to do another one and follow up, and it just doesn't really work. And so I don't know. They'll always try to go back to this material. It's obviously valuable IP, and these are characters that'll permeate and be around for a very long time. But
Hmm.
this, unfortunately, I think is probably going to have them re-examining what they might do in the future, because it's not doing that well from a critical standpoint or even a financial standpoint. So I don't know if there's going to be a huge future in the short term for these characters until something else new probably comes along. But we'll certainly have to see. But folks, those are all of our thoughts on the brand new Wolfman film. If you checked it out this past weekend, hit us up and let us know what you think about it.